Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our neighborhood meeting for Area 3 as part of our Imagine If project, as we have a conversation with the community about growth and change in Idaho Falls. We'd like to welcome all of those online. Currently, we don't have anybody in the room here live, and that's been, for the most part, the case in these meetings, that most folks are online. So we welcome you, those joining us on WebEx, as well as those joining us on Facebook Live. Sorry about that. So what we want to do first of all is to say thank you. Thank you for joining us and spending your time with us this evening. We know that time is valuable, really our most valuable non-renewable resource is time, and we thank you for dedicating some of your time tonight with us for what we think is a really important project for the city of Idaho Falls. What I want to do is just walk you through our agenda for the evening. We've tried to keep this to about an hour and 15 minutes. They've kind of ranged from that to about an hour and a half max. And to keep us on point, I just want to run through the agenda that we have, and then I'll spend some time explaining how you can participate. First of all, we're just going to talk a little bit about what Imagine If is and what it means for Idaho Falls. We'll talk a little bit about the challenges of growth, getting to know your neighborhood, and full disclosure, this is also my neighborhood where I live, so I'm kind of excited to see what everyone has to say tonight. We're going to spend some time talking about healthy communities, housing, and then transportation and connectivity issues, and then we'll have a wrap up at the end. And there will be some time to discuss things that we may have missed. If you have some questions, we can try to provide some answers. That being said, most of our dialogue tonight, most of our presentation is us listening to you. You may have some questions. We're going to try to just acknowledge those questions. Won't spend a lot of time answering them at this meeting. We'll do that later in the summer. So this is really an opportunity for us to learn from you. So I want to talk just briefly about how you can participate tonight. First of all, you can participate verbally. You can unmute your mic if you're on WebEx, and you can state your opinion as the questions get asked. You can also use the WebEx chat feature. I'll show you in the next slide, or you can use Facebook comments, those of you joining us on Facebook. And as you enter comments in the chat or enter comments on the Facebook Live, we have staff members assigned to watch and monitor each of those, and they'll read your comments aloud so that everybody can hear. So there's no pressure. If you don't feel comfortable speaking up, feel free to make use of that chat feature. To use the WebEx chat, if you're on WebEx, if you go to the lower right-hand side of the screen, you'll see a button there that says chat on it. If you click that, you can enter your comments in the lower part of that window and just hit enter. And again, we'll read those out loud as you send those comments in. So the tool that we're going to use most frequently tonight is Poll Everywhere. And that allows us to have an interaction with you live during the presentations, and your answers will appear to us live here on the screen and on your screen as well. So I want to just explain briefly how to use that, and then we'll teach you how to get logged in and get going with the rest of the evening. So first, you'll see a lot of open-ended questions in tonight's presentation. You can answer these questions as many times as you like. There's no limit to the answers. You'll enter those at the top part of the screen, and I'll explain how to get to the screen in just a moment. The second thing you can do is you can rank other people's answers. If you agree with what they're saying, give it a thumbs up. If you disagree with what they're saying, give it a thumbs down here, and that will help us determine and see how people are agreeing and thinking alike and how they may be thinking different. Third is you'll see here in the center, right on this screen, it says all caught up. On your screen, it will either say all caught up or it will say load more answers. As people continue to enter their answers, this will turn yellow, and you can click on that link and it will load more responses. So let's get you logged into Poll Everywhere right now, because this will be an important part of the presentation. If you're not able to participate this way, that's okay. You can still participate verbally. And again, use the chat, use the comments. We have a staff member that will do their best to enter your comments into Poll Everywhere for you. So again, we want to make sure we're as inclusive as possible. In the COVID world, we wish we were there with you, but since we can't be, we've tried to find as many tools as we can to still have a good interaction with you. So what we recommend on Poll Everywhere is that you go to the website, pollev.com, and then enter Idaho Falls. You can text as well, although a lot of the open-ended questions you won't be able to answer through text. So we do recommend web. You can use your mobile device, cell phone, tablet, or open another window on your web browser, and you should be able to participate. In fact, let's go ahead and ask the first question. This will just allow you to experiment with Poll Everywhere, see if you're having any trouble. If you are having trouble, please enter something in the Facebook comments or the WebEx chat. Let us know. Let's make sure that you get logged in. So the first thing we want to know is, where do you live in Area 3? We've divided this into 4 sections. So Area 1 is north of Broadway. Area 2 is east of I-15, north of Broadway. Area 3 is south of Broadway. And Area 4 is east, again, there of I-15, south of Broadway. So tell us where you live in this area, so we can get a sense of who's here. And it also allows us to correlate answers moving forward. As you answer the questions, we'll just see how answers may correlate with various geographies in the state. Okay, so yeah, as you see the answers coming up live on the screen, we've got a few folks from Area 1, a couple from Area 3. And I'm going to change the slide, but on your screen at home, this question should still be live. But in the interest of time, I'm going to move ahead. Let's go ahead and decline that on the screen. Good, please. And then you probably have to click on the PowerPoint again. Okay. So it looks like we're getting a request to annotate. We're going to deny those, but if you can put in the chat, that looks like Lisa. If you can put that in the WebEx chat, if you can, or feel free to unmute and let us know what's going on. We'll try to help you out. Let me tell you a little bit about what this project is, the Imagine If project.
Hey, Brad?
Yes.
I don't have any way to join the polling. I don't know where to put the poll ever.
Okay.
Hello?
Yes. Are you joining on a computer?
I'm joining on WebEx. I didn't know I could do it on the computer. Is it easier on the computer?
If you have, well, if you have a computer, you can log into Poll Everywhere there, and the questions will still pop up on your computer.
But I don't see where I can log into it on WebEx. I'm on an iPad.
Okay. So probably if you're on an iPad on WebEx, your best option is to either go to your computer and just type in pollev.com.
Where? I'm on WebEx. I'm not on a computer.
So what I'm going to do, just in the interest of those online, if you can see the chat, Naisha, if you can chat privately with Lisa, and let's see if we can get that figured out. But yeah, so let me back up a couple slides then, in case anyone else missed it. Oh, can you click on the PowerPoint again?
Hello?
So again, here's a joint. If you just go to a web browser, pollev.com/Idaho Falls, and this will pop up on every single question. And so Lisa, if you're still on there, Naisha is going to send you a message in the chat, so you can watch for that to pop up, and she can walk you through this. So let's just talk about growth for just a moment. Idaho Falls is growing, and that's no secret. You see it in the construction projects around town. You see it in the folks that you see around town, and you see it in the traffic. You see it in the housing prices. You see everything that's going on that indicates Idaho Falls is growing, and that's not new. Idaho Falls has been growing since we became a city. These charts show you some of those growth numbers. On the left, you see population growth. And the numbers aren't quite so critical, but just that steady pattern of growth. On the right-hand side, though, is how much land is being used up per person in Idaho Falls over time. And you can see that that's also a gradual growth pattern. And so one of the things that we've recognized is that if we continue to grow in population and we continue to use up more land, which is another non-renewable resource, that's what leads to the sprawl. That's what leads to the city being so spread out, and it makes it that much more expensive to maintain it, which means higher taxes, more fees, those kinds of things that we don't like as citizens, is caused by not being efficient with our land. And so one of the themes as we go through this conversation is to talk somewhat about how we can be more efficient with how we grow. Try to keep all the costs, the long-term costs, as low as we can. Because Idaho Falls isn't going to stop growing. All things point to a big growth period for Idaho Falls, because if we think about the resources we have to offer, we have a great fiber network so that people can work from home. People are working remotely now. COVID has taught us that we can do that. We don't have to live in the same city as our employer. We have the INL and the major projects that they're bringing to town, small modular reactors as a major employer in the area. We have access to world-class recreation and some of the most beautiful sites on earth. This is a place people want to be. Now add to all of that we've been ranked in a number of different publications. It's the best small city to start a business. Number 13 for job growth. Best small cities to move to. Top 100 places to live, and most recently named the best performing small city in America by the Milken Institute. People have discovered Idaho Falls, and they're going to keep coming. So when we asked originally and announced the Imagine If initiative, and the question went out, what do you want to do about growth? I think this slide indicates what a lot of people are thinking. Can you just stop it? Can you stop the growth? And at times we wish we could. And we recognize that we can't. People are going to come here if they want to come here, but we can manage growth, and we can make sure that it's done in an appropriate way that's sensitive to our existing neighborhoods, that's sensitive to who we are as a city. And that's what we want to talk about tonight. So let's start talking about your neighborhood. On the Poll Everywhere screen, you should see this question that says, what makes your neighborhood a great place to live? Tell us a little bit about why you live on the west side of Idaho Falls. And again, if you're struggling with Poll Everywhere, please make use of the WebEx chat, make use of the Facebook live comments, or just chime in vocally, and we have somebody that will enter your comments. So what makes your neighborhood a great place to live? Anything coming in on the chats? Here we go. Rural living in the city, west side, baby. That's right. As a fellow west sider, I'm with you. I love the west side of Idaho Falls. Anyone else? And specifically, Lisa, I know you were struggling with the Poll Everywhere. If you haven't been able to resolve that, you're welcome to unmute and tell us what you think. What makes the west side a great place? Away from retail, quiet, nice neighborhood. Here come the answers. Great location, familiar family neighborhood, removed from the urban. Okay, we have a comment on WebEx.
From Garth Davis, he says, this has always been a great part of town.
Okay, always been a great part of town. Great. So our staff member will enter that in for you. Always been a great part of town. Yeah, easy to get in and get out of town on most highways. Close to schools and trees. Quiet, family-friendly place. Okay, we'll give that a moment. So again, if you see things you agree with, give them a thumbs up. What happened there? Okay, so let's move on. This question, let me just explain one more thing that I missed. If you're not able to answer these questions quite quickly enough, these will all be available on our website starting tomorrow morning. ImagineIf.city. You can access this same poll, these same questions. You can answer them again and tell us what you think. So now, thinking about growth in the city and in your neighborhood, what are you concerned will change as the town grows? What are you worried about losing as Idaho Falls grows and changes? Tell us a little bit about that. I'm guessing the schools are close. Was probably meant for the previous question, but here we go. The amount of traffic on Broadway on Grandview. Right, so traffic, that's a common thing that we're hearing citywide. What else are you concerned about? Traffic and sprawl, connection, cost of utilities. Right, a real concern is resources become scarce, those costs become higher. Emergency response, not enough access roads. Lots of comments on traffic, right? Give that just another second here. If anyone else wants to comment. Yeah, so I see a lot of you agreeing with the comments on traffic. We have another comment on WebEx.
Garth Davis again says the police department is not growing the city and there's not traffic control.
Okay, yeah, so if our emergency response, like the police aren't growing as fast as the city is. And it makes it that much more difficult to keep tabs on crime and things like traffic violations and controls. Okay, well, thank you so much for those answers. So what we're going to talk about as we move through the rest of this presentation are some specific topics that are concerning in general when it comes to growth and your ideas from your own neighborhood and how to deal with those. So let's start by talking about healthy communities. I'm going to ask this question without having anyone in the room. It's sort of a rhetorical question, but what is the biggest predictor of life expectancy in the United States right now? The answer is it's your zip code. And to me, that simply begs the question, why? Why, if I live in one zip code area, is my life expectancy higher or lower than just on the other side of 10? More and more cities are realizing and recognizing that how we plan and design and grow affects us in these 7 dimensions of health and wellness that you see on the screen. Because when we think about health and wellness, I think often our minds just naturally go to the physical, physically healthy. But it's so much more than that to have all of our life be in a healthy place. It's social, it's economic, it's spiritual, it's emotional, intellectual, and environmental. When you consider all of these factors, you can see how cities can either design for places where people are required to drive and get very little physical activity, or we can design places where it's easy to walk or bike to daily goods and services. We can build places where we can design for and build places where people can connect and get to know each other and develop those relationships. Or we can build places of isolation where we simply go home, lock our doors, and don't speak to anyone again until we go out for work the next day. These are important components of making sure that our communities are healthy. So let me ask you about your neighborhood. Thinking of those 7 dimensions of health, how healthy do you feel your neighborhood is right now? So what you can do here is just tap on or click on the emotion that best describes how you feel about the health of your neighborhood. Okay, so we're seeing a few folks. I'm going to turn around, I can see it easier over here. Yeah, people feeling pretty good about how healthy the west side of town is. So again, think about all of those aspects: the physical, the social, emotional, even spiritual and economic health. How healthy is the west side of Idaho Falls? Give this one just another couple of seconds, and then we'll switch to the next one. So again, what's encouraging is there doesn't seem to be a lot of negative feeling. There's kind of a neutral there, but most people feel pretty good. And in fact, that's verified by data. We recently completed a healthy community assessment with a firm out of Boise who reviewed, their specialty is reviewing data points regarding community health. And this red outline shows you how the west side did. The darker the color, the more health risks there are. So the darkest color there, the tier 1, is really only found kind of in that hotel area, and it showed up because it's part of a neighborhood a little bit further to the east. So this was identified as a very healthy part of town. That census tract 13.02 was really the only area that showed up as a tier 3, which is still very healthy, a tier 3 neighborhood. And so this is, as you noted in your own answers, this is a healthy part of Idaho Falls. So it's great to have those thoughts and opinions verified by data. But even so, there's always room for improvement. And so the next thing we want to ask are for your ideas. When you think about your neighborhood, and again, those 7 dimensions of health, what are some things that would improve your neighborhood's health? If you were in charge for a day, what would you do to make your neighborhood a healthier place to live? Would it be, more neighborhood parks? There are a few people agreeing with that, right? Road improvements, okay, right. Easier access for safe bike routes, public transportation. We have a WebEx comment.
Garth again says slowing traffic down in the Temple View Elementary area.
Okay, yeah, slowing traffic down around the Temple View Elementary. Yeah, great response. Yeah, so you start to see these patterns. Yeah, a lot of folks agree with the more neighborhood parks, the bike safety and lanes and access. Keep the traffic slow. Bypass traffic coming in from the west. Right, these are all great answers. Let's just let this one sit here for another moment or two. I appreciate the response. More access roads to new construction, okay. What's rising to the top? Still parks is number one. Real bicycle paths for commuting. And I've seen a number of different themes about bike lanes. That's probably really rising to the top, is this idea of having better bike access and safety. Okay. Well, again, you can, I'm going to advance to the next slide, but you can log in again later tomorrow. And for the full week, we'll have this question available. So now let's talk about housing, because housing is an important part of a healthy community. Housing is health. If you don't have secure, affordable housing, everything else is that much more difficult. So Carrie, one of our staff members, is going to walk you through that discussion.
Hey, thanks, Brent. My name is Carrie Bueller, staff here at the planning office. As Brad said, housing is a direct tie to how healthy of a community we are. We have seen, I'm sure everyone has seen as well, that home prices and the cost of construction are rising very quickly in Idaho Falls. We see this as we look at past projections. As you see here on this slide, in 2017, the median home value was projected to be around $164,000. And current websites are showing that median price, and today is well above $250,000. And our office continually hears from real estate professionals as well as those looking to purchase homes that they're very limited in supply based on the demand. And we'd now just like to hear some thoughts about how you feel about your neighborhood here on the west side. Do you feel your neighborhood is an affordable place to live? Are you seeing and experiencing some of the same things that others are telling us regarding home prices, cost of construction? Okay. So right now, large part, people feel like the west side is an affordable place to be. That's great. I also have some who don't. Okay, good. This helps us inform our decision making as we move forward. Okay. Next question, thinking about the overall condition of housing. So this is more about basically the livability of housing in your neighborhood. How do you feel, or how do you think about the overall conditions and livability of the housing stock in your neighborhood? Are things mostly in good repair, seem to be upkept, are a plus of the neighborhood, or are there challenges or problems? Great, so we're seeing a lot of hits here on the green side of the scale. The neighborhood in general on the west side, they're kept very nice. We do see some maybe who feel like maybe their particular area or neighborhood isn't as nice. Okay. Proceed on now to just this next question. As the city grows, what concerns do you have about housing in your neighborhood? We definitely appreciate your feedback on this question. It helps us know, what additional research we might need to do as a group and how we should continue to direct the conversation regarding housing. What concerns you as your neighborhood and on the west side is that as you see things grow, as you see new construction happen, or maybe you're not seeing as much as you think should happen? What is it? We talked a little bit about traffic in your previous comments. Okay, so the quality of housing is important. The feeling that there's not as much quality for maybe the high prices that we're seeing. Great. Green spaces in new construction. Okay, those are great comments. We have a lot of existing green spaces, but maybe we need more within those developments. Okay, we're seeing not enough supply. Brian, would you mind scrolling on the scroll bar there on the comments? Great, okay, high density housing mixed with single unit housing. The rising costs for young families. These are all great concerns. Access to roads into neighborhoods, perfect. Okay, awesome. These, like I said, are great to get your feedback on what the concerns are so we can do further research and prioritize. I'm gonna move on to the next slide, but again, these slides and questions stay open throughout the week. So if you need to come back, you can put in additional comments or ideas. Okay, what thoughts or ideas do you have for improving housing in your neighborhood? As you've seen what's going on around, what do you think would be an improvement and would help improve the overall housing in your neighborhood? Okay, we're seeing planning for bike paths, good. Yes, we have a comment from chat.
So Mark Morgan, and this may have been from the previous question, but I was trying to guide some people to poll app. He says our neighborhoods should have been full of young families if houses are selling for 400,000 and up. Smiles can't afford them. I think he means families can't afford them.
Okay, yeah, so that's always definitely a concern. Not everyone can meet sometimes that price point that we see in established neighborhoods, and that can make it challenging. It's great comments. All right, other ideas for improving kind of that theme around green space. Mixed use, it looks like, is something that the people think would help the neighborhood. Great. Filling up vacant lots. Perfect. Okay. Yeah, well, there are some vacant properties on the west side that are near services and could be better utilized.
One.
Yes.
8.
Yeah.
No,
Improving, you're on.
we're on the wrong one, sorry. This is the right.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Okay, looks like maintenance of homes, that's always an issue as well. Great. Okay, subdivisions that have egress and can have access out to city streets, beautification. Okay, these are great ideas. Okay, one concept that we wanted to talk with you as a neighborhood about tonight comes from our existing long-range plan for the city that was adopted in 2013. And of course, there are many ways to address housing, but one of the things that plan identified as a goal was this concept of addressing housing affordability and availability by really reflecting economic and social diversity throughout Idaho Falls. That new existing development should foster inclusiveness and connectivity through that mix of housing types and sizes, providing for those neighborhood connections through parks and paths. So some of similar comments that we've had. So this was a plan that was, or a goal that was identified in 2013. Now this next question, how well do you think your neighborhood reflects this policy? Do you think we've been meeting that goal? Or is there still work to be done on that goal? What are your thoughts as you think through that? Trying to create economic and social diversity and fostering inclusiveness through mix of housing types. Okay, we're seeing some right in the middle, maybe a few more showing up that things are headed in the right direction, maybe moving that direction.
There is one in the red. You can see.
I can't see them. Okay, so we do have some saying that, yeah, we haven't met that goal, that we have a lot more work to do on that red spectrum. Okay, good. A lot of comments sort of in the middle. We're not seeing any on the darker green saying that we're necessarily quite there yet. Comment on chat.
Garth Davis says there are a wide variety of houses, condos, apartments.
Okay. So Garth, you're seeing that mix showing up in the neighborhood. Good. Okay. Imagine if the city did allow for more housing choice. And this is something that we're talking a lot about, especially with the rising housing costs, and also people's lifestyles are changing. More individuals are looking for housing options that fit their needs. So since the 1940s, cities, developers, we've had zoning and construction finance institutions and other systems that have really been set up very effectively to deliver that single family home. We know how to build that, we know how to permit it, we know how to finance that. Single family homes actually make up 91% of our housing stock in Idaho Falls. Apartment buildings, which are at the other end of this spectrum, they're also fairly straightforward when it comes to development of an apartment complex. But what this has done is it has left this gap in the middle, which we refer to missing middle housing. And these are different types, different price points that we don't see developed as regularly. And of course, as I said, with the rising cost of housing and the change in lifestyle, many people want to see maybe more of a mix, something that reflects a little bit more their other housing options. So you see in the slide things from a duplex to townhomes and some multiplexes, those types of things. Yes, Facebook comment?
So we do, Andrea River says, why is a huge new subdivision going in west of the village and it's all single family homes?
Okay, thank you for that comment. So that does go to that conversation. How come it's all a single housing stock? And that is a question we're asking about. Part of that is the way it's zoned and the way it's, we've talked about development history. Maybe that conversation should change. That's part of the questions we want to hear from you tonight about. Yes, comment on chat.
Mark Morgan says, what do we do with Happyville and existing trailer courts that are falling into disrepair?
Okay, that's a great question. You know, we have neighborhoods that maybe are in disrepair, but maybe there's an opportunity somewhere in here for redevelopment of those. So how do you feel then about increasing housing choices in your neighborhood? So we've heard a few comments about maybe, you know, new development doesn't have a lot of options. Should that be something that we should encourage? Should we not? Should it be left where we're at? How do you feel about it? What impact do you think that would have on your neighborhood? Or would that be a good thing for the neighborhood? Okay, we're seeing lots of people in the green, at least right now. So people feel positive, at least, about increasing housing options. Comment on chat?
Garth Davis says that he agrees with Mark, the trailer parks bringing the neighborhoods down.
Okay, great. Yeah. It's definitely something we have to keep an eye on and address. Maintaining that quality and that livability, as we talked about previously. Okay, so we have middle of the road feelings, but most people seem a little bit positive toward at least increasing housing choice in the neighborhood. Okay, another comment on chat.
Mark Morgan says the development by the village is in the county. We need to coordinate our plan with the county.
Okay, definitely. Coordination between different jurisdictions, that's great. Especially as we grow and as we're seeing rapid growth, that's important. Again, I want to talk a little bit more about housing types and sizes. And this, because these are missing middle housing, it's not something that we build most often, and so we're not always as familiar with these different housing types. So these next few questions, we're going to try to cycle through each of these housing types fairly rapidly, but then we'll have opportunity for discussion at the end as well. But before we get there, we have a comment. Great.
This is from Lisa. She says, how do we stop people from having too many families in one home?
Okay. That's a great question. I don't know that I have any answers tonight. We'll have to think through that and see that's always a challenge. But price point and affordability and availability might also help that challenge. And that comes back to these sort of multiple housing types and having housing choices in your neighborhood. And And these are all Idaho Falls examples. I just want to point out, we do have these in our community. We just don't always notice them as we drive around. So we're gonna go forward. Maybe, can you click on this presentation again? There we go. Yeah, there we go. All right, so where in your neighborhood does a twin home make sense? So there's several options there for you, from A to E, A being anywhere to E being a twin home doesn't make sense in my neighborhood. So a twin home typically is an attached home. So you basically have the units, as you see in this picture, are attached together, but they're each on separate parcels. So you have separate ownership. That's part of that missing middle housing where R doesn't make sense in your neighborhood. Okay, so right now we're seeing, for the majority, saying anywhere, that this would be acceptable anywhere. Okay, again, I'm going to try to run through these fairly quickly, but you can continue to comment throughout the week. Okay, where in your neighborhood does a duplex make sense? So duplex is going to be similar to that twin home that we just looked at, but a duplex, you usually actually have 2 units on the same parcel of ground. So just usually the same ownership. Okay, so right now we're seeing that a duplex would be fine anywhere. Gonna give it just a little bit minute to populate to see if there are other thoughts related to duplex. Okay, somewhere maybe on the perimeter of the neighborhood rather than just anywhere within the neighborhood or along your sort of major streets as you come and go the neighborhood. Okay, great. Moving on. Where in your neighborhood does an accessory dwellings make sense? So an accessory dwelling, oftentimes you'll see them referred to as maybe a mother-in-law suite. Or like a studio apartment, or maybe a loft above a garage. These units could be attached to the house, part of the actual dwelling, or maybe it's a detached structure in the backyard, or as I said, over a garage. They're usually smaller in nature. Okay, so we're seeing basically both ends of the spectrum. Some individuals thinking they'd be fine anywhere, and others saying this isn't appropriate for our neighborhood. Okay. Great. Okay, where in your neighborhood does a townhome make sense? And this townhome example actually, it comes from the west side. So some of you might be very familiar with it. Basically here you have 4 units that are attached together with individual tenants. Where would that type of house our housing type makes sense? Okay, on major streets, anywhere. Again, that towards the perimeters. Okay, where in your neighborhood does a bungalow court make sense? So, bungalow courts, again, we don't see them very often currently, but we have great examples in the city. Typically, a bungalow court is you have several units that are sort of developed around a central courtyard. They have some green space or some open space that is in common to each of those. Okay, so we're seeing, again, along major streets and some anywhere, major intersections. Again, thank you. This helps inform us as we start to look at any adjustments in the plan or modifications to code. This helps inform how we make those decisions. This is very helpful. Thank you. Okay, where in your neighborhood does a courtyard apartment make sense? So a courtyard apartment is going to be somewhat similar to a bungalow court in the sense here you see kind of some common open space or green space. But you're usually looking at something that has maybe a few more units to it. Again, if you think back to that original slide with the missing middle housing, where we go from just a single dwelling unit all the way to an apartment building, we're sort of moving up that spectrum. So you're going to see a few more units in your typical courtyard apartment complex. Okay, so it seems here that along major streets or major intersections seems to be more appropriate for that additional use. Okay, where in your neighborhood does a mid-rise condo make sense? Or an apartment? So a mid-rise condo or apartment, it's not usually something as compact or with as much units as an apartment building. And you're gonna have some shared facilities, but again, we're moving through that spectrum. Okay, so right now, above and beyond, just along major roadways. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, so now that we've moved through each of those examples, let's have some more conversation about it, about housing choice in your neighborhood. What concerns do you have as we've talked through that about allowing more choice in your neighborhood? And again, you can enter your comments into the poll everywhere, or if you'd like to make a comment through the chat or through Facebook, or if you'd like to unmute and comment as well. Okay, so we're seeing a couple comments with regard to traffic. Okay, that would make sense, allowing more units definitely will also bring additional vehicles. Okay. Higher occupancy, so I think that kind of goes back to Lisa's comment regarding maybe multiple families living in the same structure. How do we address that? Okay, we're seeing making sure that it integrates with the neighborhood and that it fits with the neighborhood. Schools, parking is the concern as well. Brian, could you scroll for me? Okay. Great. So making sure it integrates, let's just move to the top of the list. That's definitely important. Okay. So now that we've kind of talked through those housing types and your concerns, are there any housing types that you marked as not making sense in your neighborhood that you think could make sense with specific design regulations? So one of the comments that we mentioned about the concerns was making sure that these types of units integrate with your neighborhood. So specific design regulations would be sort of the way that we would do that. Sometimes that's regulating height. It could be regulating the square footage of a particular style. It could be, the orientation of the units to the street. Are there some that you didn't feel before, they just don't fit in my neighborhood, but maybe if there were some specific design standards, they would make sense? Okay, interesting. So we're seeing apartment complex right now. We have a comment?
It says parking.
Okay, so parking is definitely, with each of these, we'll have to address parking for sure. Okay, we're kind of seeing sort of an even results. This is very helpful. As we review these housing types, staff is going to continue to look at this data closely and analyze it and see how it helps us inform the future housing decisions that we make as we imagine what Idaho Falls can be. Okay, I think now we're going to move on to a discussion regarding transportation. So Brian's going to walk us through that. This goes right hand in hand with kind of some of the comments you've had already tonight regarding transportation and parking.
All right, good evening. I'm Brian Stevens, and I will take this off, be your guide as we continue to imagine IF with connectivity. We've covered a lot already. We have one more topic to discuss that we know affects your neighborhood every day. We would like to talk about how we get around and how your neighborhood is connected. We will start with a simple pull every word cloud and then advance into several questions to gather your opinions for the future of Imagine IF. So where do you go most often? Please keep this focus to the region and primarily the city. We understand that you routinely want to exit and return to the city conveniently. I'm just gonna give it a little bit of time to populate. We don't have anyone in the room, so if anybody wants to hop on WebEx and make their comments verbally, we would appreciate that, or through the chats. So it looks like grocery is a pretty popular thing that folks go to. Nisha?
Garth Davis says the west side, I hate driving to the other side of town.
I can understand that. So we're starting to see church and work, groceries, fairly dominant. Okay, this is going to be available tomorrow as I advance. The ability to access some of this is going to go away, but we will have the survey up and you can log back in and we'll be able to add at that period of time. Shopping and 17th Street are starting to come into the mix. Work looks like it's taken over. We're going to move on here. So rank your most common mode of transportation. And we're pretty interested to know what other modes of transportation you use. And we're going to have some questions in the future, or you can chat if you have any other modes of transportation that you would like to speak on. So we would expect in Idaho Falls primarily for the personal car to be the first. But we like to see that folks are out walking and bicycling to their locations. Nisha?
Lisa says her personal.
Okay. This isn't a question that we can insert your response, but if you can log in at a later time after tomorrow morning, then the survey will be up and you'll be able to put your own responses in. We thank you for your responses, and I'm going to move on to the next slide. So thinking back to our discussion about healthy communities, most communities in the United States spend the vast majority of their money on roads for the automobile. We need to keep in mind that there are other important modes of transportation that are representative of how healthy our community is. Connectivity is the key to success of moving within our city. So imagine the ability to get from place to place on foot or by alternate modes other than the auto. Connectivity is really two parts: places to go and facilities to get you there. Any chat comments? Okay. All right. If it were more convenient to get to your common destination by bike or foot, would you use those methods more often? We're very interested to know what other modes you may find usable or in the community. What do you imagine for IF in the future? We'd be happy to take anybody's vocal comments here as well. We don't have anybody in the room tonight, so if anybody wants to open up or unmute, they're welcome to speak.
So enforcing snow ordinances is a super important part of having people be able to walk in the winter. When you watch people struggle through the snow up Broadway in front of businesses that don't shovel their walks, it's really sad because many of those are low income people who are clearly just walking to Walmart for food.
We really appreciate that comment, and we acknowledge that, and hopefully we'll be back in the neighborhoods here with another follow-up meeting, and at that point in time, we're gonna have a little bit more or better response to that, but I appreciate that comment. So anyone else or any chats? Okay, I'm gonna move on to the next slide. So by accident, I deleted a slide, and I'm assuming we can get it back in there, Brad, before this survey is completed. But, so I'm gonna skip over that one. That one will come in, but it basically asked, how would you rate your neighborhood's current level of bike and pedestrian connectivity to daily goods and services? Oh no, that is this one, so it's the next one that's gonna be missing. But, can you use anything other than an auto to access daily needs, such as eating establishments, retail, work, and exercise? So, and I can't tell if there are any in the red from here, but I see that it looks like we could certainly have some improvement. If you look over at the screen, Brad, you can see if there's any in the red.
There's none.
Nothing. Okay.
There is a comment as well
Okay.
from Andrea on Facebook. It's very hard to walk on sidewalks safely when people park their cars across the sidewalk into their driveways.
Okay, and we acknowledge that has been a problem. Anything else? Any other? Okay, we're gonna move on to the next one. And so that, the slide that's missing, and I apologize, I was cleaning this up today and accidentally removed this, but it'll be back up there tomorrow morning. But it was, how would you rate your neighborhood's current level of bike and pedestrian connectivity to daily goods and services? Is that the one I read? I'm confused. There's two different ones, but so that question, there were two of them that were face questions, and one of them is missing. And tomorrow, that question will be back up into the survey. I apologize for that. So moving on, what are your ideas for improving connectivity in your neighborhood? And hopefully we have helped you imagine IF and ask you to now provide your ideas. All right, we're seeing bike lanes are at the top right now. Okay, hawking signals. Okay, bike lanes that are not just a gutter lane on the street. Safer for walkers. Basic bus services. All right, definitely looks like the bike paths and bike lanes and them being something more than the gutter or the parking strip being converted over is important to your neighborhood in the west. So we're going to move on to the next one. I appreciate all the comments. And again, do we have any chat or anyone that wants to speak? Okay. All right. Those are good comments, and I appreciate all the feedback. We're going to move on to the next slide. So walkable centers. One concept that we have referred to regularly as we go through the rest of the topics and discuss is the walkable center. Walkable centers are well connected to surrounding areas, accessible by multiple modes of transportation. They're the place where communities do things together, everything from working, shopping, learning, playing, and celebrating. Their key elements are that they include a mixed-use center They are pedestrian oriented, offer multimodal access, and provide house scale transitions to adjacent neighborhoods. And so a lot of the questions that follow are gonna be based around this concept. And so I'm gonna read another slide, but this is where the definition of the walkable center comes from, are these two slides. So I'm hoping that we can paint a well enough picture for you guys to present your concepts into our questions. So this is a snip from the Missing Middle Housing Study performed by Opticos last fall. Please take a moment to read along with me. We will be asking what you imagine in the following slides. So neighborhood mini commercial, employment areas closely integrated with the residential components of the neighborhood, pedestrian and bicycle friendly, a place you can get to quickly for daily needs. And then the bullets are most things within a 5 to 10 minute walk from home and work, streets designed to enable and encourage walking, and access to public transit and incremental change. Have any comments or, okay. So what are your thoughts and reactions to the idea of a walkable center in your neighborhood? And we would love to hear what you have imagined. So are there things that would be more convenient to you near your home? You know, a walkable centers can be, if there aren't any in the vicinity, some can be created, and we're going to ask some questions about that here in the next couple slides. So we certainly have people that want walkable centers.
Okay, so if we're going to talk about this, we need to talk about incentivizing development, because we have the area there by the old Bank of Commerce and what's now the smoke shop and what used to be a shoe store, then a pizza shop. There's also the lot that's across from Albertsons. So we have these pockets of things that could be redeveloped. So as part of this, you'll need to talk about incentivizing that so that private developers can use those lots.
That's a great comment, and we'll hopefully address that in the future.
Lisa says, how do you make a walkable center in an established area?
So, yeah, and I'm not going to get into the answering of questions, but that's certainly something that we want to know. We want to take your thoughts on that, and when we come back to the neighborhood, we're going to have more of those answers. Right now, we're just basically looking for, you know, what your concerns are, and that's a very valid concern. So I don't want to not answer your question, but we're not going to answer them. But we have an intent to come back and hopefully together answer some of these. So we're going to move on to the next question. It looks like certainly folks want walkable centers. Broadway and Skyline is a walkable center. So, you know, we and on staff feel we agree with that to some extent. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. Maybe. So does your neighborhood have a walkable center? So I'm not going to linger on this slide, but I think this is a fairly quick, straightforward. So if we could get our responses in there. Looks like it's 50-50. Looks, well, now we're moving towards there's more no's. Okay, we're gonna jump on to the next slide here. So if you said no to the previous slide, where do you imagine a walkable center should go in the neighborhood? And this again, things can be removed and a walkable center can merge, or there may be some vacant land or some opportunities to put these. We would love to hear where you think one could go in the vicinity to your home or neighborhood. So I'm going to give it a minute. And it's a little awkward because we've always had people in the room, so I don't have a lot to say about this. We're just more trying to gather information from you folks. Okay. So it looks like some things could come in on Broadway and Skyline. Any new housing developments going up near current neighborhoods. So there's potential in some of those to, to get these walkable centers. On Broadway west of I-15. Okay. So we're going to move on here. So if you said yes, in a few words, describe where your neighborhood's walkable center is. And again, when we go back, maybe I can go back to the definition and just read a few of those things. So, neighborhood mini commercial employment areas closely integrated with the residential components of the neighborhood. Pedestrian and bicycle friendly, a place you can get to quickly for daily needs. Most things within 5 to 10 minutes walk from home and work. Streets designed to enable and encourage walking and access to public transit or incremental change. So it looks like we have Skyline and Broadway. I'm going to give it a few more minutes. Any comments from the chat or? Okay. All right, I'm going to move on. I want to say I'm going to turn the time back over to Brad for the wrap up, and it's been a pleasure to receive your comments, and I look forward to being back in your neighborhood.
Hey, I want to say thank you again to everybody that's participated. No, don't go anywhere yet. We still have a couple of things to talk to you about, and a couple of calls to action as we move forward. I also want to explain in this section what we plan on doing with the information we've received, including those questions. So I know, Mark, online, you commented a couple of times, and those ideas about incentives and talking about the snow removal. And Lisa, you've had some comments as well that you voiced, and others as well. Let me explain what we plan on doing. But before I get there, I do want to ask this question, and that is, what did we not cover, or what did we not cover enough? If you could have had a few more moments with us, if you could have designed the meeting, what's on your mind that we didn't cover? There is a part of me that wants to move on when it's blank, and I think we covered it all. But now's your chance. Tell us where we can improve, what we can think about in the neighborhood. Maybe we did cover it all.
So one thing that probably needs to be talked about is coordination with the county, because a good example is Bellin Road, which came up in one of the contacts. When we pushed through the connection on Bellin Road to get over to Sunnyside, without widening it, putting in a sidewalk, putting in a path, That is not a good route. It's not a good idea. And so we need to coordinate better between the city and the county as we move forward. We also need to think about infrastructure, power grid, the I-15 power pole issue we had the other day. You know, those are some of the things we need to think about as we grow.
No, thank you. So if we let our staff member enter that, some of those comments, better coordination with the county, some of the infrastructure issues that you mentioned. Do we have another comment? Jen?
One comment was the water tower in South Capitol. I see it's on the screen as well.
Okay, right. So covering the water tower. Okay. Yeah, so strategic planning to rational zoning, more traffic enforcement. Great. No, and we appreciate this. It is important for us to know what we need to do to make sure we're addressing your concerns as a neighborhood. So things more on, the infrastructure. Yeah, the retirement community's tiniest home developments. Yeah, that's a very popular trend that we haven't covered yet. Okay. Getting rid of yield lights. Okay. Great. We'll keep those coming. This question is going to stay live for a moment while I continue to talk through the next couple of points. So yeah, if you're on the Poll Everywhere app, you'll still see this as I move ahead. So let me tell you what our plan is from here. So right now we're probably in the middle of our public discussions. We're doing that now through the end of March, and after March and for the remainder of the spring and summer, we'll take all the information we're receiving and talk about draft plans and policies and ideas and possible solutions to the issues that you've raised, and bring those back to you in July and August, where we'll do another series of neighborhood meetings. Now, at this point, we don't know what those look like, if they'll be live and in person or online again, or some combination of the two. It really depends on how COVID is treating our area at that time. But we want to ask the question, did we get it right? Did we cover those things that you think are important? Are we proposing ideas that make sense for your neighborhood? And so you can expect to see more information and conversation with us later in the summer. And to that point, one of the things we want to make sure that we capture is your contact information if you'd like to stay involved. So for those of you on WebEx, if you could please enter your email addresses if you'd like to be involved in the chat. You can also go to imagineif.city and email us there. I know a number of you have. So you can stay in contact with us and stay informed as we move forward. A couple of other things we would ask and recommend to you is we do have a citywide survey that's available at imagineif.city. These are questions that deal with Idaho Falls as a whole, but not specific to your neighborhood. That survey will remain open for the remainder of March and the first week of April. So you do have a little bit of time to complete that, but we'd sure love to have your opinions there and to share that survey widely. Share that with your own personal networks and friends and contacts and neighbors. We want to hear from you. Also at imagineif.city, starting tomorrow morning, you'll have a link to the questions that you were asked tonight. If we're moving too fast, if you have some more thoughts, those questions will be available to you for the next week until next Wednesday morning when we'll close that poll. So those are available. Share that on your social media and with your networks. Then the other thing that we just announced earlier this week is the opportunity to leave us video memories about Idaho Falls. We're really interested in how you connect with Idaho Falls, what's made it meaningful to you over the years, and that helps us think about what we need to preserve and what we need to try to capture and maintain as Idaho Falls continues to grow. So again, it's all at imagineif.city. You'll find a link for video memories. You can leave us the videos. You can also upload photos if you're not comfortable making a video for us. Just upload your photos and describe what's meaningful to you. So again, I want to thank you for your time and spending your evening with us, sharing your ideas. I know that we weren't super engaged in a dialogue back and forth, but our intent was to learn from you. And so please stay tuned and engage with us as we move forward through this project. And I hope you all have a great evening. Thank you.